We swearing on this episode?
Fuck yeah, let's do it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Rouge Rugby podcast, where we talk about real Canadian rugby. I'm Stu Hardy, joined as always by Derek Brissett. And Derek, we had how do I put this? You know when they say that no news is good news?
Sometimes that could be true. Yeah, that could be.
Yeah, well,
true.
some news came through today, and
News. Yeah,
some news has happened, and it's come out of Rugby Canada.
yeah.
And basically, Kingsley Jones, the head coach of the men's senior 15s team, the first Canadian head coach of the men's team to fail to qualify for the Rugby World Cup for the first time in its history. Since qualification has become a thing, because obviously they were invited for the first one, has a losing record of 15 wins and 30 losses, 31 losses, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Has now had his contract extended by 2 years.
2 years. 2 years.
Yeah. 2 years, 24 months.
So, okay. The reaction online can only really be described as hostile and
unanimous,
which, like, the internet agreeing on something is like a monumental moment in human history. Unfortunately, it's because nobody seems to like the fact that Kingsley Jones is back. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, I can't say that I blame them.
Nope, not at all.
Upon reading the news, I don't know, Stu, what was your reaction? Well, we'll switch it up a little bit. We'll hear from you first, and then I'll give you my reaction, which may lead into more conversation. But
so there had been some rumblings on social media, only rumors at the time, now proven true, that Kingsley Jones was having his contract extended. And so, it was one of those things of like, okay, now that this is out there in the ether and stuff like that, I need to be able to prepare for it. I need to be able to, get used to like seeing this come in an official capacity. And then I think Brian Ray, who has also been very vocal about this subject, and said then when he reached out, they said, they'll be making a statement about the coaching staff come, the fall, October time. So again, I was like, okay, that's not really conclusive. And of course, we know that Kingsley didn't do the right thing and stepped down when Canada failed to qualify. So, I had this so it's a whole case of being disappointed but not surprised.
Yeah.
That it's I know that now, to be honest, we have only just been informed of the extension today.
Yeah.
Which is the 16th of October. Yeah, and I know that Stephen Aboud is quoted in the press release as well. But it is one of these things and actually, let's go into the press release because
no. Let's finish the instant reactions first. You haven't really said what your reaction is. You're just like,
I think my reaction could be summed up in 3 words, and a lot of Canadians will have it. And even if you speak French or if you speak Spanish or if you speak Afrikaans, it's a sentiment that is appreciated. It's like, oh, for fuck's sake! What is the point?
I'll see. Now you added to it. Now we're at 6 words.
Yeah. The first 3 are the instant reaction, and then and then you can add in your own twist afterwards.
See,
but for fuck's sake seems to be the standard.
I think my reaction was immediately like, what the fuck? I think that was another one. And so I guess that's a different 3-word sentence. So we're on the same page, but we went a little
bit. Same wavelength. Same.
I had 2
emotion.
I guess I kind of had 2. I feel like initially I think I felt similar to you, where it was just like the longer that this went on, and the more Kingsley Jones continued to coach the team, even though his contract was ending, the longer he stayed, the more it felt like he was staying.
Yeah.
and more it felt like that he would be staying permanently, right? Because as we kind of talked about, I think even like it was either before or right after, maybe even during the two Tongan games. I think we talked about on one of those episodes that like it doesn't make sense that Kingsley Jones is coaching the team at those games
Yeah.
unless he's gonna stay, really. All right.
Yeah.
And like if he's just and even if he's just like Rugby Canada for whatever reason you want to make up in your head. Well, and even if you initially thought, I guess for whatever reason you decide to make up in your head that like why Kingsley Jones would be there, it's like it doesn't make sense for him to be there if he was not going to be extended.
Yeah.
Right? And we kind of theorized that back then, right? And I think because of that, I was kind of on the same page as like kind of expecting it. And in all honesty, I thought I like went through that like, the stages of grief and hit like the acceptance before today.
Mm-hmm.
But then upon seeing it today, I was still like, I can't believe that he's got extended. Right.
Yeah.
And my second reaction though to its secondary reaction, kind of read the press release and everything. And then as you just mentioned, the press release made me even more angry.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll get into that in a second. My second reaction though was like you didn't even have the balls to give him the 4 years.
No.
Like you know what I mean? Like you gave him till the next the end of like the next, I guess, leg of the 2027 World Cup qualifying.
Yeah.
Right? Like you couldn't, as Rugby can, like if you like to me, and I think to most fans, it's like Kingsley Jones to me has done nothing to justify his return. I could
I'd
almost,
agree with that.
like I could almost live with the fact that if Rugby Canada was like, we're gonna let you run out your contract, I still think that was bad.
Yeah.
And it's like the time, like we've said before, the time to fire him was years ago by now.
Yeah.
Right. And if we're gonna have the same conversation in 2 years, it's like this is just dumb. And as you said, like, what's the point and what are we doing here? But like to say that, if you're gonna like if you're Rugby Canada, like if you're gonna back this guy after like since 2017, where all the Canadian national team has done is lose. All the men's national team has done is lose. Like that is it. One, it showed like, and you're not like, and I'm trying to gather my thoughts here. But if you're gonna if you all they've done is lose, and you're going to keep that coach, but you're not even gonna back him for the full World Cup cycle. Like you are, to me, that 2-year deal is Rugby Canada saying we expect you to lose in 2 years, and when you lose, we will cut ties at that point. But if by some miraculous reason you do win, maybe we'll extend you for the 2 years. But it's like you don't. I'm reading that as Rugby Canada doesn't even have the confidence to give him the full World Cup cycle. And if you hired a new coach, whoever that new coach would be, I guarantee that guy gets 4 years on his contract. And Rugby Canada didn't even have the balls to give Kingsley Jones the next World Cup cycle. They gave him one more qualifying tournament. And based on 2 years, I'm like, yeah, cool. We'll be having this conversation in 2 years too. Like, what's as you said, like, yeah, sure. Let's get into the press release so we can break this down. It's dumb.
So obviously, the black marker lead the team through 2025, appointed head coach, and time to lead Canada to and at the 2019 World Cup, blah, blah, blah. Work to widen the depth of the rugby program, investing in young players and building Canada's depth chart, with now over 90 players in high-performance daily training environments. Yeah,
Stop
okay.
there.
Yeah, that line alone.
Stop there.
Fuck you.
Stop there.
Fuck you, Rugby Canada. That is
all right.
Flat out false.
We're stopping there. Yeah, we're stopping there. Okay. Rugby Canada, through like the press release, is giving Kingsley Jones a lot of there's a lot of props giving to him for like the Pacific Pride program. And I mean, that's a Rugby Canada initiative. No matter what you think of the results, Kingsley Jones is the head coach of Rugby Canada. And yeah, the Pacific Pride is a development squad for the national team that, whatever the full details of how that squad came back, did come back under Kingsley Jones' leadership, right? And I'm not going to sit here and say that, the Pacific Pride is bad, because it's not. It's a legitimately good thing. And Rugby Canada seems very keen on crediting Kingsley Jones with that right now. Probably because the press release that Stu is going to be reading from mentions absolutely nothing about the actual on-field record, other than the fact that they didn't qualify for the World Cup. That's the only thing that they mentioned as far as his on-field.
Yep.
But this statement, there's 34 players in the Pacific Pride program, according to the Rugby Canada website. Pacific Pride is high performance, and kudos to them for doing that. The statement says 90 plus. There's 60 guys in Major League Rugby. That's what the other 60-ish guys are.
Yeah.
It's Major League Rugby. It's not as nothing to do with Rugby Canada, other than the fact that Kingsley Jones happens to be the coach when Major League Rugby got created. Yeah. Right. And it's like, sure, there's guys in Pacific Pride. That's great. I love that. But it's like, to sit here and say that it's like it's like we're developing, like we have all these guys in a high performance system. And it's like, we have all these guys in the high performance system because of the MLR. And unless the MLR was Kingsley Jones's idea to start, it's got like very little to do with him. Even if, yes, maybe he sends like a letter of recommendation to a team. Maybe maybe he can make a call for a player, right? And if he's doing that, I'm not trying to take that away from him. But to sit here and say that he's helped put guys in a high performance, 90 plus players are in a high performance program, but like it's all the MLR, right? Like that's what, like 2/3 of those players that they're referring to are MLR players. It's like they're not in a Rugby Canada camp. There's not 90 guys in Rugby Canada camp like all year. There's 2/3 of these guys are playing for the fucking Free Jacks. Like that's what they're doing. Like they're playing for the Free Jacks or the Turbos now, because that's apparently the Free Jacks farm team is the Manitoba Turbos or whatever. They're playing there. They're playing for the Dallas Jackals. They're playing for the San Diego Legion. They're playing for the Toronto Arrows. That's where 2/3 of those guys are. They're not in they're in high performance. Yes. They're not in a Rugby Canada program. They're in a professional league that was founded independently and without of Rugby Canada, other than maybe Rugby Canada having to like sanction it or do whatever legalities that they may have to do. And maybe Kingsley Jones recommends a player or two, but it's like, you can't credit him. Like, what are we going to do? If Miami starts signing Canadians, we're going to be like, yay, they added an extra 10. And be like, no, it's like the Miami GM did some scouting and happened to sign guys from Canada. Like, that's not how it's a different league. It's like, you're not going to see like Basketball Canada is not taking credit for developing an Oklahoma City Thunder player. It's like, that's where they're playing. Like, I don't know. That part annoyed me, because I'm like, it's got more to do with the MLR than like if Mark Anscombe had the MLR, like we would say the same thing. Like it doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah. Mark Anscombe, by the way, got fired for missing the first leg of the qualifying tournament too, because they lost to the USA. That's why Mark Anscombe got fired and Kingsley Jones got hired in the first place after 2 years out from a World Cup. If you want to circle back to that contract length.
Yeah, it's fucking bullshit.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, anyways, the statement as a whole is giving him far more credit. That's like, he's contributed to foster opportunities for Canadian players to compete and train in the MLR and overseas, whilst also improving collaboration between the Canada 7s and 15s programs.
Yeah, all the 15s guys that decided they want to play 7s instead.
Yeah, and it just feels to me like, when you have a manager who's in the room when you come up with an idea, or your colleagues come up with an idea, and he was like, well, I'm the most senior person here, so it's my idea.
Well, even at that, that's the second time it's mentioned MLR, and I'm like, dude, like, it's like, I get that there is a bit of like some sort of like partnership and things between the MLR, USA Rugby, and Rugby Canada, but it's like, It's not like we
You don't
created
need to do
MLR.
6 degrees of
Like,
separation to
yeah,
find
like
out the
the
involvement.
MLR would exist without Kingsley Jones, and like
Yeah.
Canadian players would be in ML. Like you look at like the origin of the Toronto Arrows, and sure, there's a lot of Rugby Canada guys there, but like, did Kingsley Jones didn't build the Ontario Blues, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the origin of that. Like that happened. Like that all happens
Independent of it.
independently, and it's like I'm not saying that like Kingsley Jones doesn't maybe look for places for guys to play or help players out, because if he is the head coach, that's what he should be doing.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not going to say he doesn't do that, but like to be like, yeah, under Kingsley Jones's watch, like 90 guys are in high performance program. And I'm like, it's like the Arrows and Free Jacks scout guys too. Like, how many uncapped guys played in MLR? Like Andrew Quattrin didn't have a cap before MLR, right? And
Yeah.
it's like, you know what I mean? And he's like the best hooker in the country. Like, right. And because he used MLR to like what it seems like to get noticed, because now you got more games and stuff to watch. Like you like, I don't know. I just think he happens to be the head coach when MLR got created.
Yeah.
Right.
By the way, Andrew, if you're listening to this, please get in contact with us and say, how involved Kingsley was in your process for, joining the Arrows to getting into
or any player. I mean,
any now I'll be on now. I'll keep it fair for this moment, because there are guys in the Canada squad that have probably been picked by Jones or have been recommended to Jones, and they are now in the squad as a result. But
it's
but at the same time, it's in these guys are also good enough that whoever was in the position of head coach would have been picked. That's my opinion.
Well, okay, fair. And I mean, this goes for anything. Like, I mean, we are obviously upset right now, and you know what? We may see it. We may say a thing that isn't quite factual. So please feel free to reach out and correct us and put us in our place.
Yeah.
But like the other part of that is it's like the wording is there's 90 plus Canadians in a high performance environment, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, does that include the guys in Europe that
nope?
Hell
no.
Team? Like, are those guys included in this? Like, are we counting Tyler Ardron and Evan Olmstead and Tyler Dogood and Will Persilia? Are those guys part of the Canadians, like, in the high performance environment? Because last time I checked, rugby in France is pretty fucking good despite the results of the last weekend, right?
Yeah, so, but that's it. I don't know, man. There's a bunch of players that have gone over internationally, and the line that the organization is using is like, oh, they don't want to risk their spot in the squad, they don't want to risk their paycheck and stuff like that. Ooh, even though this Regulation 9 means that these players have to be available by their club if they are called up for duty. The counter argument is they don't want to play for Kingsley Jones's Canada.
Like USA doesn't have. Why doesn't the USA have this problem?
They have their European guys that as soon as the announcement comes out, they're flying over, they're in training camp, they're getting prepared. But Canada, Canada's different. It has 2 extra time zones, therefore, it's completely different.
I seem to recall McGinty playing at the World Cup qualifier.
Yeah, I remember that as well.
I seem to remember.
Actually, I remember like a couple of guys in French clubs for the USA came over and played as well. Yeah. You're not misremembering that. I definitely remember that. But Canada, their guys, they don't want to risk losing the paycheck. I mean, the USA guys obviously play for free in France or some bullshit. Stop lying to us. If you don't want to pick them or they don't want to be picked, I would much prefer that. And
that's the thing, right? Like
we're gonna get back into
it's a bit of a sidetrack, but it's like if those guys are part of that 90 plus count, like okay, like that's fine, but like use them. Like why? Like because even like Peter Nelson has been the only guy that seemed to be like playing in Europe but would get picked for the squad. Right. Obviously, last year he became a Toronto Arrow, but like for a bit of time there, like it's like Peter Nelson was the only European based player, right? Like even like Shane O'Leary never got picked, right? As
Yeah.
we mentioned, like Ardron showed up for the second leg of the qualifier against Chile, and then quite frankly didn't look very good in that game either, right? But like one guy showed up for the second leg of the qualifier against Chile from
Yeah.
overseas. Like it's not, and it's like if you can't get guys for that game against Chile, like you're not getting anybody for any game and stuff. And like like it feels like there's like a contingent of guys that are overseas in France that just don't come here. And it's like seeing like the 90 plus count is like, okay, that's obviously, 2/3 of that's MLR players, 1/3 of that's like Pacific Pride. And then there's probably like a little bit of like loose change there. That's like the handful of guys that are playing in Europe.
Yeah.
But also it's like, I wonder too how many of those guys are just random guys that are Canadian eligible that are just around the world. And it's like, oh, like this guy's from Australia. We know he's Canadian eligible. Well, hopefully we can get him to come here. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like how many of those guys are also exist and stuff, which I mean, like Canada has done a good job of bringing some guys like that over that have Canadian eligibility. But again, though, it's like, I mean, I don't know, like if Kingsley Jones is doing some extra work or has implemented something to help find those guys, and again, like good for him. Like I'm not here to say that every single thing he's done has been garbage, but like, but
The main thing.
it's yeah, exactly. It's like it's certainly not enough to justify re-signing him. Like, and I don't know. Keep going. Keep going. What part? We got one sentence into that before we snapped. So I mean, I don't know. Keep going.
Yeah, and he's talking about like instrumental in restoring the pride. Worked with Canadian coaches like Sean White, Phil Mack, Hubert Boyd.
Yeah, worked with the guys on his coaching staff. Yeah, good job.
Yeah. And then we get the quotes from Rugby Canada CEO Nathan Brombis as well as Stephen Aboud. So Brombis says, we recognize that it's disappointing not to see Canada in the Rugby World Cup this year.
You bet your ass it is.
We need to make significant improvements and rebuild our program to see our Canadian team back knocking on the doors of the very top rugby nations. Considerable building work has already begun, but there are lots of elements that need to be put into place. We need regular fixtures, consistent competition for our national team squad, in addition to quality training and coaching. Right.
Yes, I agree. In addition to quality coaching is needed. I agree with that.
Yeah, quality training and coaching. Now, I will say, the whole thing of getting regular fixtures, consistent competition, that is something beyond the head coach's remit. I mean, you can be frustrated by it. You can be like arguing and saying we should having more, but that is a decision by the union itself, with World Rugby, with other unions as well. And that is something that does need to be addressed. I do agree with that. That is 100% true. And I know that COVID had a huge impact, not only on Canada, but tier 2 nations across the entire world.
Sure.
But then he follows, we believe that Kingsley is the right head coach for this next stage in our journey, providing consistency to our program and continuing the work started in developing our squad. If there is one thing that we do not need of the last 6 fucking years, it's consistency, because it has been consistently bad, consistently losing, consistently underperforming. And it's not because of the players, it's because of the dickhead who's leading them.
Yeah, like that about sums it up. Yeah, like consistent. I think the next quote too says something about stability or something too, and it's the same thing. It's like you've been consistently losing, and like I agree with the words that Nathan Bombrey said in this. The words are correct, like they're arranged in the correct sentences and structure, and the word selection is right, but the context of it is so incredibly wrong. And it's just like you said, like the consistency is, well, like you said, the record's 15-31. Like it's not like what consistency are you looking for? Consistently losing?
Yeah.
Like consistently getting your ass kicked, consistently talking about how there's a lot of learnings that we can take, and we'll build that training next week. We're getting Rugby Canada. Kingsley Jones' favorite sentence: "We're getting better week after week." Right? Like it's like Canada's been getting better week after week for like 6 fucking years now. And we're still not here, right? And like it doesn't make any sense to like what stability do you want? And it's like, dude, I think like
this is the definition of insanity. It is doing the exact same thing again and again and again and expecting different results. And
it is. I mean, I know you want to get into the high performance review later too, and maybe we can talk about things with that. But it's like, like the Shoresy thing of like, you have like, it's not like that you need to love to win, but you have to hate to lose.
Yeah.
Rugby Canada does not care about losing.
Rugby Canada doesn't seem to care about a lot of things.
It's true. It's true. Honest. But it's like there's nothing. It's like you like this signing, this re-signing, rehiring, just to me is like Rugby Canada doesn't care about wins and losses at all. Like at all. Like they didn't even mention it in his press release. And you're saying like you said, stability and consistency. It's like what? Like the team's 15-31 under Kingsley Jones. Like I don't know. I'm too dumb. I don't know what percentage that is. I can't do math on the top of my head. But like it's 15-31, right? But it's like you look at like the list of the wins. Like in that 15 is like Oxford University. You should win that game. If you lose that game, that should be the game that you get fired after. Coventry, probably should win that game too. Premiership side, I think, whatever. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you should probably win that. Yeah, like you should probably win that game still. The BC All-Stars. If you don't beat the BC All-Stars, like you shouldn't be allowed to leave the field wearing Rugby Canada apparel. Like it should be that fast that you are dismissed from your position. It's a provincial team. You should, in a World Cup buildup, you should win that game. If you play that game 45,000 times, you should be 45,000-0 in that game. The other ones though are like they beat Belgium a couple times. The Netherlands is the most recent win. Got one win against Spain, one win against Brazil, a couple wins against Chile. The three best wins are Kenya, Germany, and Hong Kong, which were in the 2019 repechage tournament. But of course, you know how you get to a repechage tournament, Stu? It's because you lost. That's why you go to the repechage tournament. Now, in fairness to Kingsley Jones, the losses that sent Canada to the repechage tournament were Mark Anscombe, who got fired for not qualifying for the World Cup, which has somehow been a standard that has completely changed at Rugby Canada for reasons unknown.
To qualify that is that Mark Anscombe failed to get America's one for the 2019
America's one. They lost to the States.
And then under Kingsley Jones, they lost both games against Uruguay, which then put them in the repechage. So so he does bear some responsibility.
So Kingsley Jones is 0-3 against Uruguay, by the way, which is not good considering we got to play them to qualify. Kingsley Jones is also 1-7 against the USA. And that one, granted,
they never shut the fuck up about.
Yeah, that one, granted, is the best game Rugby Canada has played under Kingsley Jones. And it got thrown out the window because they lost the second game and therefore did not qualify for the World Cup. Or lost that round of qualification and then had to go play Chile, which is another one of the 15 wins, is again the first leg of the 2-leg aggregate qualifier, which again is like, they're going to go on wins under the records, but they feel a little hollow when it's all said and done. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of brutal that it's like that, like most of these wins quite frankly, like if you took this list of his wins, like, and put them in front of like the 2011 Team Canada, 2000, even like pick a year, 2007 or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, you go back any real length, even 2015. Don't even have to go back that far. Go back to 2015. You put this list of his wins in front of those teams. Those teams will be 15-0. Like they should be. Like Spain, Brazil, Chile, Oxford, Coventry, Kenya, Germany, Hong Kong, Chile, BC All-Stars, USA, Chile, Belgium, Netherlands. Like the 2011 Team Canada runs through that 15-0, like easily.
Yeah.
Right. And granted, obviously Kingsley Jones won all 15 of these games too. But it's like there's not like, other than maybe the repechage tournament because of how important that is, there's not like a really like impressive win here. Like there's no like upset win. Like, you know what I mean? Like the USA is like, that's a team that, again, go back to like 2011 or whatever, that Canada used to beat all the time. And under Kingsley Jones, we're 1-7 against them. Right. So I'm like, when I hear like that statement of being like, oh, we need consistency, and I'm just like, consistency in what? Like we've done nothing but lose. Like nothing but lose. And I'm just like, so to say that you want the consistency and that, you know, like you're happy about how, I guess you want that consistency and you're happy with Kingsley Jones's performance enough to re-sign him, just tells me that it's like, you don't, as an organization, Rugby Canada doesn't care about losing. Don't hate to lose. Probably don't care if they win or not. Just collect, go to the clubs, collect those Rugby Canada fees, and I don't know, call it a day. Try to remind people every once in a while that Sophie DeGoody exists.
Yeah. Well,
shout out to the women's team. I'm sorry.
We'll be praising, the women's team in due time. But let's continue on with the statement, because we have the quote from Stephen Aboud. Kingsley brings a wealth of experience, technical knowledge, and commitment, well, to the role of head coach. A tireless, passionate, and energetic approach underlined by a constant need for technical improvement are essential in the preparation.
You know why you need a constant need for technical improvement? Because you're always losing.
Yeah. Rugby Canada's goal is clear Rugby World Cup qualification, and Kingsley appointment ensures the stability and familiarity required to build with confidence towards achieving this goal. How can you have confidence in Kingsley Jones? How can you have confidence in the one coach that failed to qualify for the Rugby World Cup in Canada's history? How is there any confidence that this team can be led? You know, there's the expression of lions led by donkeys. This seems to be it, because we see the Canadian players take to the pitch in MLR. We see them take to the pitch when representing Canada for the senior men's team, and we see their effort, we see their commitment. And then we, you know, eventually come to the post-match interview where they're like, where it's always like, oh, you know, disappointing loss, but how do you think you did? Pass the mic over to them. And they constantly say the same thing. We didn't have enough time to train. We didn't have enough resources to do so. And with that, you can say, okay, that's the fault of World Rugby for allowing it. But at the same time,
that was one too. That's a recent one.
Yeah. And like even something as simple as like player rotation, which we brought up after the Tonga games, is that you're playing Tonga in twice in the space of 5 days, and you're using essentially the same starting lineup for both games. What the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah, man. I mean, yeah, like I don't know. Yeah, like you said, it's like the confidence thing is just like yeah, like that, those sentences, and it's like those are the right words to say. They're the correct words to say. If you're hiring a coach, if you're re-signing a coach, those are all like, they're the correct words to say. It's just in this context, I'm like, how do you believe that? Like I don't understand, right? Like you said, it's like, what has he done to give you that confidence, right? Because it's like, again, like you're gonna have to beat so World Cup qualifying, let's skip ahead. You're gonna have to beat the USA, right?
Yeah.
Again, he's 1-7 against the USA.
Mm.
You're gonna have to beat Uruguay. He's 0-3 against Uruguay. You're
Yeah.
gonna have to beat Brazil. He's lost to Brazil. Like, you're gonna have to beat Chile. Chile just whipped your ass and got to the World Cup, right? Like, dude didn't even get to go to the repechage tournament. At least Mark Anscombe left him something to attempt to do to qualify. Like, you don't even get to go to the repechage tournament, right? It's like, I don't know where that confidence comes, like where that confidence could possibly come from in him, because it's like, it's certainly not the Rugby Canada fan base.
Hell no to that.
There's no confidence there. Like, again, like, look at the comments on, pick your favorite social media platform.
They're all there.
Yeah, go look at the comments. They're all like, it's an overwhelmingly negative reaction to the re-signing. It doesn't. I don't understand where that confidence comes from.
We've even got like Squidge Rugby is that this is legitimately the stupidest decision a test team has ever made in rugby union history.
Oh,
his brother Will Owen. This might be the worst decision any rugby board has ever made. Kingsley Jones has killed what was once a celebrated rugby nation and done the worst job of any coach in the history of international rugby.
Boys, I love you. Your podcast is amazing. Please don't tempt Rugby Canada by challenging them to that. It's like, I understand that you're like, hey, this is the worst decision that's ever been made. Like, I feel like that's like a jinx, and I would prefer them to not say that, because I'm just waiting for the next decision that Rugby Canada has to make, and we'll see if we can top it. It's just like I don't know. Like, again, though, but I think that attitude from me also comes from the fact that I have no confidence in Rugby Canada, like, at all, and therefore I have no confidence in Kingsley Jones, and I have no idea where the confidence in. But it's like, in Kingsley Jones from Rugby Canada comes from. But also, it's like the fact that it's like the rest of the world seems to be being like, it's not even Canada complaining about this. It's like the rest of the world is like, what is happening? Like, how are you re-signing this coach that, again, has done nothing but lose? It's done nothing but lose, man.
Yeah, it's and then we have in the rest of the press release, we have some information of Kingsley Jones' playing career, which obviously doesn't really matter at all.
No.
The fact
that coach Jonah Lomu, that's a cool fact that has no impact on whether or not Kingsley Jones is a good coach.
Jones coached Russia at the 2011 Rugby World Cup and
were they
Dragons. Good? Well, they didn't make the knockout stages, I'll tell you that.
No, they weren't good,
or even the top of the pool. So make of that what you will.
No,
helmed Dragons RFC.
Yeah, were they good?
They've never been good.
Yeah, exactly. Keep going.
Yeah. And earlier this year, he earned his second appointment as assistant coach of Barbarians FC in their Killick Cup showdown against the World XV. You know, being assistant coach, you would expect to have a bit of influence. Do you know how many Canadians were in the Barbarian side this summer?
None.
Exactly.
That's usually because that's usually like Tyler Ardron or something. Who they play in France, right?
Yeah, but there's also the thing of, first of all, this is done outside of
I don't
play.
know.
So I didn't like you couldn't find one uncapped player and bring them up. That's a tradition for the Barbarians.
Oh, yeah, there you go. That's cool. Yeah, that would have been cool.
Assistant coach, I don't know. Zero influence.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, you think you could get like one or two of your guys to come play in that game, eh? But I don't know. Maybe the Barbarians' performances what gave Bombrice and Aboud the confidence to re-sign them. Maybe they were like, look at the Barbarians' attack or whatever his job was for that. Maybe that's where it is. Maybe all this comes down to it's the Barbarians' fault. Maybe that's the problem.
Yeah. And then Jones himself says the following quote: "I am excited for the opportunity to continue building with this team. A lot of the dedicated, hardworking young players we've worked with over the past 6 years are now 26, 27 and
Correct.
reaching their prime, and I'm excited to see them fulfill their potential, which is a challenge in and of itself when you have Jones coaching. Having depth, raising and driving standards, pushing each other on is very important to being competitive. It's a great honor to coach for Canada and to have the opportunity to continue building cohesion and continuity with this young group to put us in a good spot for 2025. You know what would have been fucking fantastic is if you had done that entire building cohesion and continuity 4 fucking years ago, and then we wouldn't be in this fucking position.
I mean, you're not wrong. Also, he's talking about all these guys being in their prime when they're 27, which means that the next World Cup they're all going to be in their 30s.
Yeah, jeez.
Like, you're not like, you know what I mean? Like, and I mean, yeah, there's some great players that, like, again, it's a great statement. Like, he has said the correct words. If you just got re-signed, he said the correct words. There is a lot of great players that are like 26, 27. Like, I don't think he's wrong on that. But like, again, though, it's like all those guys are going to be in their 30s at the next World Cup. If you get there, they're all going to be in their 30s. Right? Yeah. Like, and it's like you know what I mean? Like, it's like, I would be more pumped if he talked about the exciting, like 21, 22-year-old players that you can develop and get and have them be hitting that prime at the next World Cup. Like, that's because that's where the excitement is for Rugby Canada fans right now. Is like the guys that are coming up and going to be in their prime, not the guys that are probably already there, but like, I don't know, like that's another thing too. Like, because I mean, even if you get to the next World Cup, how many of those like 27-year-olds that are going to be over 30 are still going to be on the squad?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's again, like, I don't necessarily like all three Rugby Canada guys, like in the press release, like the quotes aren't bad. But it's like in context, it's like they're kind of nuts in context, if that makes any sense. It's like again, like there's a mention or two of like being disappointed and not qualifying for the World Cup, but it's like and we'll hit the high performance review and talk about all the culture stuff that they mention now, but like like, I don't know, like the statements you're saying are correct, but I don't see how this re-signing addresses anything that you're talking about.
No.
Like,
either
way, high performance review.
Yeah,
too.
the high performance review, for those that need a reminder, was that in 2022, Rugby Canada released the high performance review, looking over their men's and women's 15s and 7s account, and basically talking over everything: age development, the relationship Rugby Canada had with provincial unions, its sponsors, its
it went over
alumni,
literally everything, including like where the high performance facility is. Like, everything's under this.
So I just want to quote something from that review. Basically says, the dysfunction of the system is ultimately a failure of leadership. Either through acts of omission or commission, leadership of the organization, board, executive, operations, and coaches have not effectively managed the short-term and long-term needs of the high-performance program. Leadership has also failed to cultivate and nurture an environment that truly supports and enables high-performance athletes. As it currently stands, Rugby Canada's high-performance athletes, support staff, and even coaches are effectively revolting against the program system, leading to a growing organizational dysfunction and a continued worsening of high-performance results. The culture of Rugby Canada and the high-performance program is described as empty or non-existent. In this vacuum of culture and leadership, bad behaviors take hold across all areas of the program. The high-performance program is described as unhealthy or unsafe by many. Current players and high-performance program alumni confess they are not proud to wear the Rugby Canada jersey. Over the past years, Rugby Canada has started to evolve itself, particularly around organizational governance, and this effort must continue as the organization will need to change on a broad scale. This change will require letting go of the past, embracing innovative approaches, and empowering new voices. While not forgetting its history, the organization must look forward and support a different leadership approach with a different sense of what drives high performance. Ultimately, addressing the challenges of the high performance program will require courageous leadership with a willingness to make a material change to the organization's system. The change required in Rugby Canada's high performance program starts with the issue sitting at the heart of the organization's current dysfunctional system: the lack of a high performance strategy. Creating and articulating a clear high performance strategy should be the program's top priority. With this strategy defined, improvements to the program's culture and structure, including rebuilding trust with a diverse stakeholder community, can progress and be sustained. And just a casual reminder that Kingsley Jones has been in the role of the senior men's head coaching position for the last 6 years. So this entire thing, talking about the dysfunction, the worsening of a high performance results, he was there for that. And in some ways, whether minor or major, contributed to it.
So, in all honesty, like rereading the high performance review, having you read that back, pulling these quotes from the high performance review, it genuinely pisses me off, like listening to this and just being like, genuinely, like, what was the point of the high performance review? If we're just going to ignore it. It's like, this has literally been spelled out that you need to change leadership, you need a change of culture, you need top-down change, you need to basically revamp the entire way you operate. And I have no idea how that's happening at Rugby Canada. Because we're what, a year and a half since this high performance review?
Roughly. May 20.
Yeah, like, okay, so like we're like a year and a half away from this, past this high performance review, and like nothing's changed, or at least nothing publicly visible has changed, right? And it's like we're talking about, okay, so it's like talking about the idea of like you need like new leadership, we have to let go of the past, empower new voices. To me, that sounds like get some new people in, right? And I think, and I'm like, I don't understand how keeping, like when you're talking about leadership and you're talking about that, I don't understand how keeping the same people that had leadership roles within the organization around after you've been told that you need to change leadership makes any sense at all. I don't understand that. And the thing that also concerns me is, and I believe this is something we touched on episodes upon episodes back. I don't know. I didn't go through and look for it. But, you know, Nathan Bombrys and Stephen Aboud, up until this point, have been exempt to me from all of this.
Yeah.
You weren't here. I don't like any of Rugby Canada's problems are from before you got here. Right. And I'm willing to give you, I'm willing to give you all time to be like, yeah, we have to assess what is wrong with this organization, how we can make it better, blah, blah, blah. Right. I understand that. It's on you now. Because it's on you now. Like now it's like, I can't separate you. Rugby Canada fans aren't going to separate you anymore because now your decision has been made. And your decision has been made to keep the same shit that has been happening for years, that a high performance review was conducted. And by the way, I believe Alan Vanson resigned right after the high performance review, and now that's Nathan Bombrey's job. So like, this is what the high performance review did, right?
Yeah.
But it's like you are choosing to keep the same people in position that there is literally countless, well, it's not countless, but it's a super long document that I don't remember how many pages were in it. Like, that talks about how much shit at Rugby Canada you have to change. And you're not changing anything. It's the same coach, man. Like, how do you go be like, every word in here, leadership, the high performance athletes and coaches are revolting against the high performance system. Like, and I mean, maybe Kingsley Jones is one of those coaches. Maybe Kingsley Jones has some beef with how Rugby Canada, other people at Rugby Canada are doing things, whatever. But like, how do you like? And then we talk about culture, but like, how do you keep the same people involved and expect to change the culture? Right? Because what this does too, right, is you have now rewarded somebody for this culture. Why would they change? Why does nobody wants to change a culture that they're successful in? Right. And you just gave Kingsley Jones the evidence to be like, he is successful in this culture. You've re-signed him. That's a reward. That indicates that you're happy with his performance. That indicates that you think what he's doing is successful. So why would he change anything that he's doing? I mean, other than the fact that I'm sure he wants to win, like I don't doubt that he doesn't want like that he wants to win or anything. But like, I mean, maybe I think they don't hate to lose, but like whatever. But what is going to change at Rugby Canada under Kingsley Jones in the next 2 years? Because it seems like nothing. And even to that degree as well, is like this rehiring, and to circle back to Bombrice and Aboud now too, right? Two people that I believe were previously, in my mind, exempt from all of the Rugby Canada nonsense that came before they got hired, right? But are now part of it. You can't deny. But I'm also now concerned that it's like their hirings are brought upon the same culture that came before, looking for people that facilitated the old culture that the high performance review is like, this is failing. And now I'm concerned that if you think that Kingsley Jones is still the right coach for this team, right, that you brought, despite needing these changes, you have now brought in similar-minded people that still think Kingsley Jones is the right coach for the job, and which probably means that they are also encouraging that culture that has led to the failure of Rugby Canada in the past, but is now like, but you're also like rewarding that. So it's like, I don't know how Rugby Canada is going to change culture, because you have people that, at least in the sense that they're being hired, they're being promoted, they're being whatever, are succeeding in the culture that Rugby Canada created at the expense of the teams, at the expense of wins and losses, at the expense of going to World Cups. Right. And I don't understand how any of this could possibly change if you're not willing to bring in new personnel, which includes, like, you didn't even have to be mean about this. Right. Like, you didn't even have, at this point in time, you didn't even have to fire him. You could have just let the contract run out and be like, hey, man, thanks for your time. We appreciate everything that you've done for us, but it's time for us to go in a different direction. Like, at that, you don't even have to be mean. Like, if you're friends with the guy personally, like, sure, you don't even have to be mean about it. Right. But you got to bring in, like, the fact that you're not going to bring in somebody else, though, it's like, how is this going to change? Like, what's going to change if you don't change the personnel? Like, because culture starts from the top down, right? Which means that Kingsley Jones is dictating the culture, especially for the men's 15s team, right? And again, from the top down, that means Nathan Bombrice, Stephen Aboud, the two guys above him in that organizational ladder. If Kingsley Jones is dictating the culture of the team, that means Bombrice and Aboud are dictating the culture to Jones, which means that this rehiring indicates that they approve of the way he's dictating culture. Right? Or whatever that culture is, right? I don't know. I might be rambling a little bit, but like, I don't get how does any of this change? Like, what change are we seeing? I don't know. At this point.
No.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
Yeah.
Well, in advance, just want to congratulate Uruguay, Chile, and USA for qualifying for the 2027 Rugby World Cup. Okay. Well done, gentlemen, and enjoy Australia.
Yeah.
I mean, fuck it. Rugby Canada doesn't care about the senior men's 15s program. Why the fuck should we?
Okay, so that's a good point too, because like, yeah, I do actually kind of agree. Like, yeah, like why do we care? Why, I mean, we do this podcast as a Rugby Canada podcast, and it's why do the people listening to this care? Why does, like, there's all the comments and everything. It's like the most interacted post with like any Rugby Canada social media in the last like year. It's Kingsley Jones being rehired. It's like again though, like like why care? Like if you don't help yourself, like at some point I'm like we're all just gonna give up on you. Like which I mean I'm saying that and I know it's not gonna happen because it's like I mean we are diehard rugby fans in Canada. Like it's but it is though, and it's like man, like how can you like convince like new fans to be like, hey, watch like the Canadian rugby team this week? Right? Because it's like, man, like it's like those two games against Tonga, like I hated those games.
Yeah.
Not so much because the way Canada performed in them, but just like the like man, like we gotta find like trying to find a way to care about those games like was rough. Like and I think it's gonna continue. And I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, Canada's got in November Brazil, what did they got? We got USA and then
they're playing Spain and then
Spain. We play Spain
and then either USA or
okay.
Brazil.
So we got Spain and then the winner / loser of USA Brazil, depending on what happens in our game, right?
Loser. Let's be honest. Loser.
The loser. Yeah, after we lose to Spain, we play the loser of USA Brazil. Fair enough.
Yeah.
But like to me right now, it's like these two games I have now, I think in the last like 5 or 6 hours or whenever we found out that Kings, those two games are now, those in my mind went from being relatively meaningless to those are must-win games for Rugby Canada. Like you have to win those. And when I say that you have to win those, you have to win those for Kingsley Jones' sake. Because if this re-signing contract, or like, and even if it doesn't kick in until technically the next calendar year, which I'm sure is how that actually works, but like, even if that doesn't kick in, it's like, you need to win this because every loss is going to be the exact same comments. Like, honestly, for Kingsley Jones' mental health, like, genuinely, like, I hope he doesn't go on social media. I genuinely hope he doesn't. Like, for his
probably shouldn't listen to this podcast or this episode.
Yeah, that too, maybe. Like, yeah, but like I hope he does, because it's like, man, like I don't know like how much like of an impact that would have on an individual to constantly read just people hating you all the time. Like I genuinely don't know. Like but that's a different mental health is important. That's a different issue altogether, though. But like for like, because every single time Canada loses now for the next 2 years, every loss Canada has, it's going to be fire Kingsley Jones.
Yeah,
that's going to be all the comments are. No matter what happens in that game, no matter what happens in the game, because all the comments are already like that, and now you've extended his contract when you didn't need to.
Yeah,
all the comments are already like that, and every game is going to be fire. Like Canada, like the comments that are going to come from that Spain game, if Canada plays poorly, are probably going to be mine.
Yeah.
Like, right? If anyone bothers to watch it, which is another issue altogether. Yeah. Like, if anyone actually bothers to watch it. I don't know. So yeah, it's going to be crazy. Are you about ready to move on? Because I do have one.
Yeah. No, you put in your final statement.
All right. Yeah. So like my final thought is kind of this. I don't think Kingsley Jones should be the head coach of Rugby Canada anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, but ultimately, at the end of the day, he is the head coach of Rugby Canada, and I want to see Rugby Canada succeed. Like, I genuinely do. Like, as hateful as this whole podcast, as hateful and as angry as this whole podcast has been, as long as Kingsley Jones is the head coach of Rugby Canada, I want him to succeed. Like, I don't want him to constantly lose. I don't want the team to suck. Like, I want him to do well, right? But I want Rugby Canada to do well. I want Rugby Canada. I think we both want Rugby Canada to do well. I think most people listening to this podcast are like diehard Canadian rugby fans that want to see Rugby Canada succeed. And at the moment, if Rugby Canada succeeds, that means Kingsley Jones is succeeding. So realistically, as hateful as this is, there's nothing more that I want than the Kingsley Jones to prove every single one of us wrong over the next 2 years. There's nothing more that I want than for Kingsley Jones to be like, you know what? Maybe he should go on social media, make a board of all the tweets, of all the posts saying how much he stinks, right? Have this podcast playing at the Rugby Canada office on loop, right? And go out and prove us all wrong. There's nothing more that I want because I want Rugby Canada to succeed. I want them to get back to the World Cup and do that, right? I don't think he's the guy to do that, but I hope I want him to be because he's the guy we have.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That being said, to Nathan Bomberies and Stephen Aboud, you cannot be wrong at all.
Mm-hmm.
This is one decision you have to be 100% correct on. 100%, or else in 2 years we're also calling for you guys.
Yeah,
it's not just going to be fire Jones. It's going to be fire Jones and the guys that kept him here. Because what, like, you cannot be wrong on this decision. Absolutely, there's no room for error at all with this one. Because if you are right, and Kingsley Jones does what feels like the unthinkable, and somehow turns a program that he drove into the ground, somehow turns that around and gets Canada back to a World Cup and brings Canada back, then so be it. But if that, then so be it, and I will cheer and I will happily eat my words. But if he doesn't, I don't know. Like, it's going to be detrimental for Rugby Canada in both the terms of building the game, building the popularity, and obviously the success of the national team. Because you have either set the team back another 2 years to even begin rebuilding, right? Or you're going to shock us all. I don't think there's an in-between. But you can't be wrong. Like, this decision from Bomberies and Aboud, it cannot be wrong, right? Or or I don't know, or I can't do another 2 years of doing the same podcast, talking about the same mistakes from the men's national team, talking about how we're getting better week after week and blah 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 blah. Right? I can't do that for another 2 years. As you have turn this around now, because it's like that. That's the other thing. I think if this is another coach, I give you time. You have time. I don't expect you to be good right away. This is another coach. I give you time. It's Kingsley Jones. You get good now. Because it's now. You have to get good now.
Yeah, essentially, if for some reason Mr. Jones is, let's say, I'll make it clear, get to fucking work.
Yeah, that was part of it. You don't have time now. It's like you need to. There's even if under another coach, it's like maybe you get a leash. Maybe, if you lose to Spain, if you lose to USA, you lose to Brazil, whatever games get set up next week, I might not care. But now that it's Kingsley Jones, you better win that game. Prove that this is the right call.
Yeah.
Right? You got to win those 2 games in Spain. Right. You win that little mini whatever tournament it is. Because you have to. You can't be wrong. With this call. Right now, everybody thinks you are wrong. So prove us otherwise.
Yeah. All right. We have given our thoughts on Rugby Canada's rehiring decision for the past hour. Let's talk about something a bit more positive as we move back to focus on Toronto, because there's been more MLR news and re-signings. And since our last recording, we've had 2 new re-signings. It is Deshaun Bowen, the hat-trick hero, and Mason Flesch have returned to Toronto for the 2024 season. Bowen coming in mid-season, picking up that hat-trick against New York on his debut. Fantastic way to make his name known to the Arrows fans. And, now he's getting a full preseason to show what he's truly capable of. I mean, there were a few instances last season where his defense maybe wasn't up to the highest standard that we expect, but obviously coming in short turnaround from sevens into 15s, I can understand that. Mason Flesh, had a 14 starts last season. 22. He was obviously cut short due to injury and required surgery, but came back just brilliant. And now we have one, two, three, 5 forwards signed, 6 backs signed. We have 4 players that have been traded, and the Arrows still have 9 foreign player slots to go for. So no, the squad's coming together. We've obviously got still a bit of a ways to go until we can get a proper match day 15, but I do like the Arrows spreading it out nice as we go. We'll be expecting more signings to come between now and the end of 2023. Yeah, what do you make of these 2 coming back for more?
Yeah, I mean, I like it. They're 2 young players that obviously, made an impact last year, and you want to see them continue to grow in their professional rugby careers. Bowen's, and as tough as that last season was for the Toronto Arrows, which, by the way, they did fire their coach after the season was over, after they lost and didn't meet expected results. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, Rugby Canada. But either way, like, as disappointing as that season was for the Toronto Arrows, that Deshaun Bowen hat trick was one of the best moments of the season. Even though it was a game that they lost, but like, just the fact that, hey, a guy got a hat trick, that was really cool. It was a cool moment. He's got speed to burn. He's a deadly finisher. Yeah, maybe needs to round out the game a little bit more, but I think that's also what makes me excited to see how he develops going into next year. And as you said, give him a full training camp, give him a full season as well. And like, just let him loose, man. He's an electric player. Right. And, it's one of those guys. It's like, hey, man, like, even if the scoreboard doesn't go your way, it's like, be entertained. Right. Like, it's, you gotta, he brings an exciting brand of rugby, no matter what that scoreline says. So, he ended up being one of the more exciting players on the team last year. And, the fans seem to really appreciate him for it. So glad that he's back. Mason Flesh, I think, is kind of continuing to develop into probably one of the brightest, young Canadian rugby players. We went back, go back to last season. We interviewed Corey Thomas before the season started, and he mentioned that Flesh was the player that he was the most excited about, like, playing with and watching grow and develop over the last season. And he showed why over the course of the year. Like, he's solid in the lineup, has a high work rate, great tackler, great at the breakdown. Can obviously play second row, can play back row, versatile in that regard, and was able to kind of step up and take a little bit of a bigger role with with the squad this season. Obviously, now Mike Sheppard also retiring. That's going to definitely mean that that Flesh is basically going to be the guy going into the second row. Corey Thomas and Mike Sheppard have both retired, right? So like, that just opens up a lot of spot for this seems like the year for, like, Flesh to kind of really
establish himself.
Really take a step, establish himself, get on those Rugby Canada squads, right, as well, have a really good MLR season, solidify his spot on the Canadian national team, take that big step and really be the guy for the Toronto Arrows in the pack, now that there is a little bit of a changing of the guard happening, as a couple guys are retiring. And I'm sure we'll see what I'm sure there'll be, like, new guys coming in too, and we'll see what the whole squad looks like. But as it's sitting right now, it's like, it looks like it could be a really big year for Mason Flesh next year. And I'm excited to see what his game looks like, because I think Corey Thomas was on to something about him being, like, the most exciting player to watch last year. So looking forward to it.
All right. Well, there are 2 international tournaments taking place this weekend. There is the inaugural WXV, split into 3 tiers. WXV 1 will feature their first games this Friday and Saturday for us in Canada. As we have England kicking off against Australia. Then we have the Canada versus Wales game, and the repeat of the semi-final of the 2021, played in 2022 Rugby World Cup, between New Zealand and France.
Mhm.
I think even though I'm excited for the Canada game against Wales, I think it's the New Zealand versus France game that's going to be the showpiece of the opening weekend of that tournament.
Mhm.
WXV 2 and 3 began this past weekend, so they're 1 week ahead. We have the results of those games. Italy beat Japan 28-15. Scotland beat Romania 30. Sorry, Scotland beat South Africa 31-17. And the USA beat Samoa 36-26. Then we go to WXV 3, and the gap slightly widens. Fiji
Slightly.
slightly. Fiji 67, Colombia 13, Spain 32, Kenya 0, Ireland 109, Kazakhstan 0. I mean, I was watching that game, and at half time it was Ireland 50, Kazakhstan 0. I was like,
should have let the men's team borrow a couple of those points.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of it, it was the World Cup quarterfinals, because we are now into our semi-final predictions. So let's go through the two of the games of the quarterfinals. First up, Wales versus Argentina. Wales, had a great start. Dan Bigger getting the try, then the conversion, then a penalty. And penalties really were the name of the game, because Argentina were collecting a number of them. That got them back into the lead. Then Wales were able to come back with a try. Then a very controversial decision, especially amongst the Welsh population, about
it's controversial to you?
Yeah, well, I think it's a black mark against the refereeing, but that has also been an issue that a lot of people have had with this tournament. Yeah. It's not so, I wouldn't say it's so much against Argentina, because I don't want to take it away from them. I think Argentina were ultimately the better team on the day. But in a time when the World Rugby has come out about against like hits to the head and protecting the players and stuff like that, it was a shoulder to the face, so much so that Jack Morgan had to sorry, not Jack Morgan, Nick Tompkins had to leave the field to have a HIA.
Yeah, don't hurt the Saracen players.
But there was no repercussions whatsoever. I mean, I know there was mitigation, but not even a penalty. Anyway, it ultimately led to Argentina taking a lead through a converted try. And then as Wales were under pressure trying to get back into a game, Sam Costello's pass got intercepted. Argentina went under the post to get another 7 points and finished the game with a penalty, bringing them into the semi-finals since the last time the World Cup was in France.
Oh, weird. Well, there you go.
No, sorry, that's a lie. Since 2015. So anyway. I remember it being played at the Millennium Stadium, and I remember France were at the Millennium Stadium in 2007. So
Millennium Stadium, famously in France. Yeah.
That famous French victory of France over New Zealand in the French World Cup. Then we had.
Hold on, you can't talk about this again. We have to mention Matthias Moroni's tackle on Reece Zammit, though.
Oh yeah, that was a try.
That might be the best tackle ever made. Like
that was
saves a game-winning try, and then obviously Argentina closes it out a few minutes later. But like the amount of area that he had to cover to make that tackle, like Reece Zammit is in the air, taking off for that finish there, and he is one of the best finishers in the world. Yeah, and Moroni was just no, we're not losing today. Go take a seat in the front or in the first row. Enjoy. Watch us beat you from there. It's that game was incredible. That was an incredible game.
That was the first of 4 incredible games, because the next game,
I was going to say, this is the thing that pissed me off the most about the Kingsley Jones signing, is now we had to spend the top podcast talking about this instead of the greatest rugby weekend of all time.
Yeah.
But now I guess we're doing it.
Yeah, we're going to move along quickly, because next up we had Ireland versus New Zealand. And, absolutely enthralling stuff.
Unreal game. So good.
So close, so tight. within a score throughout it entirely. Try scored here, returned with a try. I think it was like a point difference at half time.
Yeah.
And then, Ireland in the final passage of play, Ireland are moving up, getting further along the field. And then, Ireland just get isolated for a second when Sam Whitelock's hands get on the ball. The penalty is called, and that is it. Ireland's curse continues. They only make it as far as the quarterfinals for another World Cup. Joining Canada there on the couch.
Yes. Yeah.
The quarterfinal exits.
That was the one thing I was like, I'm so happy I can use my Ireland has won as many quarterfinal games as Canada joke for at least another 4 years. But this game was incredible. From the All Black side, I like Artie Savea absolutely balled out in this one. He was a ton of fun to watch, dominant at the breakdown.
A player that I gotta say, a player that has been written off for the past, I'd say like 18 months or so, but really showed their capabilities. Sam Cane.
He was outstanding too.
Incredible.
Man, like Ireland couldn't get anything done at that breakdown.
No,
no matter who was there. And I mean, like, that's what it kind of came to at the end of the game. They had that unreal like, this is crazy because the game started with like what the All Blacks had like a 30 phase passage of play at like in the opening like 2 or 3 minutes of the game. And then Ireland, obviously, trying to win the game, had like a 30-ish phase passage of play too. But yeah, like Kane, Savea hitting the breakdowns was outstanding. And then like Sam Whitelock, man, like the vet, being the guy that gets that, finally gets the crucial turnover. And I mean, like, this is one of those games where I'm just like, both teams play incredibly well. Both teams were phenomenal. Both teams were outstanding. It's one of those things where it's like, it almost just feels like it just comes down to who wants it more. And there's something in the DNA of that green jersey that cannot win elimination games. I often, exactly. Like, I often try to, like, when trying to talk about rugby and explain rugby to my not like non-rugby friends, you kind of look for like comparisons in other sports, and every time I'm like, Ireland is the Toronto Maple Leafs, and it feels like no one cares what you do in the build up to it. Like, you got to get it done when it counts, in those knockout stages for the Leafs in the playoffs, and they just can't do it. And unfortunately, too, it's like Sexton's last game and stuff, and that's
it's Sexton's last
cup or
professional rugby game ever. It was Dan Bigger's last game in a Wales jersey, and as obviously, you want to go further than the quarterfinals, but as in, this is a guy who's mainly known for kicking from the tee. Again, the conversions and penalties to end the game, to have his last game have a try under the posts. I think that's something that's going to be pretty special for him. And also, I got to say,
would have taken the win though.
Absolutely, but so I was just in quick check in the 2019 quarterfinals. It was New Zealand versus Ireland again. That result 46-14. This time around, it was 28-24. So
I mean,
the gap narrows, but
it's like
not quite there yet.
That's the thing. It's like Ireland is the best team in the world according to the world rankings, right? Like, they're the world number one, and New Zealand just knocked out the world number one in the quarterfinal too, right? Like, it's like, this is a game that, and I think this is what made the quarterfinal round so incredible, is if all 4 of these games were the final, we would have been ecstatic with how these games turned out. And we got 2 more weeks of this, right? But
we got 2 more weeks, 4 more games. So it's good. But let's move on to the Sunday. We had England, Fiji. Now, England were the first team to get on the board. I think that was through the boot of Farrell before Tuolagi scored a try. But then Fiji were able to come back. And then in the second half, it was something like 24-10 or something for Fiji. And within the space of 5 minutes, Fiji had scored 2 converted tries, and it was 24 all. And the stadium was rocking, it was bouncing, the neutrals were enjoying it, everything. And then something you don't really see at World Cup knockout stages anymore. We have a drop goal. Farrell nailing that, and then doing well, and then England pick up another penalty, and then it is another case of same with like the Ireland New Zealand game. Fiji have the ball, they're making their way up the pitch until they're just not in position. I think it's Courtney Laws gets his hand on the ball, the penalty comes England's way, and that's the game. England 30, Fiji 24. But the atmosphere has been great, the emotions have been fantastic. And then we come on to the closest game of the quarterfinals, France versus South Africa.
Unreal.
There was not a drop left in the tank at the end of this game.
It was incredible. This was another one of those who wants it more games. Like there's not a lot. There's nothing between these two teams. This is just, especially the last phase of play, this is just one of those like, who wants it more games. That's really
again, it comes out of like 1 point difference after Bailey getting Bailey's getting 2 tries. South Africa got 4. Etzebeth, got yellow carded, but also made amends with him getting a try in the 67th minute. Ramos scoring points, apart from when Cheslin Kolbe was like, no, that ain't happening, charging down the kick, doing a Matt Hood, if you remember that from the Arrows game against LA up in Vancouver Island.
Try,
But coming right down to the death final phase of the play, and it ends up going South Africa's way, and there is heartbreak around the stadium, heartbreak in the streets of Paris, that France, the hosts with the most that have put on this World Cup, are suddenly eliminated. They're not even making it to the bronze final. It has been a near sweep of the Southern Hemisphere. A lot of teams that Argentina was written off against Wales, New Zealand had, because they said that Ireland beat them on their tour to New Zealand last year.
Don't write off.
South Africa up against the hosts France, and even England, like they stepped their foot off the gas for 5 minutes, and suddenly they're not as safe as they once thought they were. But oh my god,
the South Africa is so impressive to watch. Like, I love how their game management is unreal. I love how they kind of use like strategies that no one else really does. That one play where they called a mark and then asked for the scrum, I was like, you guys are the most badass team on the planet. Like, being like, it's like, we'll take this scrum inside our own 22, please, because we know we're gonna win this. And then like, your forwards are going to get grinded down. And then we have like I said earlier, they got the best pack in the world and the second best pack in the world. So take advantage of it when you can. But like, the last play of the game to me was just like, it was so like impressive to me that in a 1 point game, South Africa's still like, we'll kick the ball to you guys with a minute left. Like, we're okay with like giving up possession with a minute left. We're not going to try to hold on to it. And just be like, we dare you to beat our defense. Like, here's the ball. Good luck. You got to go 80 meters. And France did make some good ground. But like, the thing that really like impressed me the most too was like when they got into like that like kicking range. And like, you're in that territory where it's like a penalty like will potentially lose the game. A penalty will set up a kick that could potentially win the game. And at every single breakdown, South Africa was just like green light trying to poach the ball. At like no regard for like, if we take a penalty, we're gonna lose or whatever, but also just the confidence that they're not going to take a penalty. And every single ruck that France had, like 30 to 40 meters out from the South African line, perfect kicking range in front of the post, every single ruck, South Africa had like two guys trying to poach the ball, and eventually they got it. But it was just like the complete like confidence and courage to be like there's a lot of teams and a lot of players that don't try to poach the ball in that situation, to just be like, let's, hopefully they'll knock it on, hopefully they'll make a mistake somewhere, right? And then, like, South Africa's like, no, we're counter rucking every single one of these, and eventually we're going to steal the ball, and they did. And just like the trust that they have in their defense, because to get it done, I think is mind blowing to watch sometimes. I believe they did the same thing against Wales back in like 2019. They kicked the ball back to, you would probably remember. They kicked like the ball back to Wales in that semifinal or whatever, and right, and basically did the same thing. Kind of dared Wales to come down and score.
I mean,
like
if it works,
yeah. And it's like when you got the best defense in the world, like, use it. I think that's the one thing that is really impressive with South Africa all World Cup and the build up too, is like they don't really do anything like super conventional. They do what's the best for their team, right? Whether that's like a 7-1 split on the bench, or like calling for a scrum inside your own 22 after a mark instead of kicking it back. Like they do everything that's just like the best for their team. No other team in this tournament takes their captain off after 50 minutes. Right. And it's like like South Africa just has the players look like they just have complete buy-in to their system and do what is best for their team. And they won the last World Cup, and they're 2 games away from winning this one now. And it's very impressive to watch.
Yeah. Well, with that in mind, we are making our predictions for the Rugby World Cup semi-finals. So first up, Argentina versus New Zealand. Derek, who have you got?
All Blacks all day.
I mean, I would love to see Argentina make it to the final for the first time, but after that performance by the All Blacks, I mean,
Argentina is the cooler team to come in.
Yeah.
It's the more entertaining, it'll be the more fun team. Everybody wants to see, like, realistically, like, out of all the World Cups, only 4 teams have ever won a World Cup, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like,
and 3 of them are in the semifinals.
Three of them are in the semifinals, yeah. And like, it would be cool. It would be genuinely cool to see someone new win a World Cup. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it would be. So I mean, like, Argentina's the last hope for that right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, like, I'm gonna pick New Zealand, but if Argentina pulls it off, like, I'd be excited. That'd be cool. That'd be great. And plus, we can get a little shout out to the Americas side if they win.
That's true.
Yeah, I'm still taking the All Blacks though. Got it.
And the second semifinal, England versus South Africa. So a repeat of the 2019 final.
Yeah. Do you want to go first, Stu? You look like you were say something, get some thoughts off the chest,
I know. I think this is going to be a very close game.
Yeah.
But after your approach, I think this is South Africa's game to lose. I know that England, obviously, they made the final through a different path in 2019. South Africa did the same as well. But nothing from this tournament has really shown that South Africa can't handle what's thrown at them.
No. Yeah. Like, no. Like, even that game that they did lose to Ireland was also kind of like like, that's what Ireland's about. We learned a little something about ourselves. We'll move on in the tournament. And like, I think I agree with you. I think I think I gotta go with South Africa just on form. I know before the tournament started, I was kind of like, it'd be fun if England won the World Cup just for chaos. So there's a small part of me that kind of wants to stick with it, but I mean, this World Cup's been so great that we don't. I don't think we necessarily need chaos anymore. The thing is, like,
also a New Zealand South Africa final for the first time since 95.
And if it would be unreal. Well, that's the thing too. It's like that's part of, like, these quarterfinal games was incredible, but also like looking at the semifinals, it's like no matter what the final ends up being, incredible. Like if you get Argentina through, Argentina versus England, Argentina versus England is just going to be like obviously, you know, hey, like you're gonna have your northern hemisphere versus southern hemisphere again, but it's like Argentina can win their first World Cup, England can win their first one since 2003, right? There's storylines there that we can go off of. Argentina versus South Africa, will obviously be South Africa is going to go back to back, could go back to back at the World Cup, right? And also get their fourth World Cup, which would kind of maybe solidify themselves and maybe give them a chance to claim that they're the best rugby nation in the world ahead of New Zealand. Right. And like Argentina, again, just winning their first World Cup is cool. If New Zealand wins, New Zealand, England, right, you get the rematch of the semifinal at the last World Cup, a couple of the similar things. And then, yeah, New Zealand, South Africa is like the epic rivalry, right, that gets to play at the World Cup on the World Cup stage, right? So it's no matter what these matchups end up being, it's phenomenal storylines and like you know they're like this World Cup has been great and the knockout stages have been incredible, and I mean like I'm looking forward to the two games because like I feel like they're going to be amazing. The bronze medal game is going to be amazing. The semifinal will be amazing. I'm excited for all three of these. Or I'm excited for like the four remaining games. It's been a hell of a World Cup. There's not much separating any of these teams. And like, you know, I feel like it'll probably be another weekend where it's like there's not going to be much to separate them. We can analyze what happened. We could talk about like, you know, what went wrong on this play, what went wrong on this play. But honestly, it already feels like it's just going to come down to who wants this more. Like there's nothing separating these teams.
Yeah,
like,
it's gonna
brilliant.
Well, I know it's just going to be a great weekend of rugby, not only because of the semi-finals, but also the WXV. And if you want to watch either of those tournaments, you can find that on TSN. And the Premiership returned last weekend, and the URC returns this weekend, and both of those competitions are available on Sportsnet. So if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to check out more, as well as our written pieces on our website, rougerugby.ca. You can also find our podcast on Spotify, S4P, and Apple Podcasts. We also have a YouTube channel at Rouge Rugby with episodes of the podcast, and make sure to like and subscribe and hit the bell notification to stay up to date with all our videos. We're also available across social media, including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads, all at the Rouge Rugby. Derek, where can the fine people find you?
At Brissette the Jet across all social media platforms.
And you can find me across social media at Hardman, spelled H4RDMAN. Well, that's where we're going to end this episode. Derek, thank you for joining me, and thank you all for joining us for another episode of the Rouge Rugby podcast, where we talk about real Canadian rugby. We hope you can join us again next time.